One of the most important things throughout the entire United States here over the last few years has been having good drainage. Now certainly there are some areas of the country that have had drought, but in most of the country where we're trying to raise corn and soybeans and wheat, we've had at least periods where there has just simply been too much moisture. And too much moisture is a horrible thing for crops. Crops do not like wet feet. They can grow so deep down into the ground very quickly early in the season, and they simply cannot grow down into a water table. With tiling, all we're doing is lowering the water table. And what we wanted to talk about today is if you want to tile in 2012, you want to improve your farm, what do you need to get ready right now so your plan can be successful this coming year?
Just real quick, Brian, when you mentioned there are kind of pockets that have had problems with water, you don't have to have trouble with water the whole year long for tile to be important. Even if it's just for a few weeks in the spring, that can mean the difference between getting stuff planted in May, like this year, May versus June. Well, we saw corn yields drop off up to 100 bushels per acre when guys had to delay about a month in planting because the soil was just too wet to get into. So this is a really big deal. So you got to start this planting process right now.
The most important thing you need to do if you're going to tile in 2012 is to learn about tiling in general. So if you've never done much for tiling before, we encourage you to come to one of our free Ag PhD tiling clinics. We encourage you to go to university events, talk to other farmers who are tiling, do everything you can to learn about tiling. And like I always say, you know, putting the tile in the ground, that's probably the easiest step when it comes to tiling. It's all the other things, going through NRCS, talking to your neighbors, all that kind of stuff. It's all that groundwork you have to lay in the beginning where it just takes a tremendous amount of time. And before you do any of that stuff, we want you to understand the benefits of tile and how to properly express yourself when it comes to explaining the benefits of tile. In other words, you're going to have a lot of people saying, oh, you're going to flood us out if you tile, and tiling's bad for the environment, and all these other things that are absolute nonsense. So you need to understand and have some data when you go forward talking to people, and that's one of the big things that you will get out of going to the educational events.
So you learn about how to do tile and what it's going to do in your soil and how to explain that to the neighbors that will be affected by you doing some tiling. Now the important thing is to get it done. Now in our part of the world, the first step revolves around getting a 1026 form filled out.
If you want to stay in the government farm program. So in other words, you need to get NRCS approval if you want to be in the government farm program. If you're out of the farm program and all the people who you are affiliated with on your farm are out of the farm program, you don't need to do that step.
Well, you may not, and if you don't, then you have to look at what local or state regulations you have, and this varies depending on which county you're in and which state you're in. You may have to talk to a local water board, you may have to talk to county commissioners, you may not have to get approval from anybody, you may just be able to go out and do it. That's fine if that's the case. Now we certainly recommend talking to your neighbors. In some parts of the country it's required, in other parts it's not, but we feel it's a very important thing to do. Talk to your neighbors, explain to them what you're doing. Even if they disagree with you, it's a good point to talk about it first rather than to say, oh, guess what? I'm going to drain some water on you and here's where it's coming. It's all coming out one spot in your field. Deal with it. I don't think that's the right way to go about it.
Okay, so you go through all those steps and don't think that we're minimizing this at all because they are extremely important steps. It's just that we've talked about them before in Ag PhD and we encourage you to learn more about them throughout the next few months and get all these approvals done and all that.
And they vary by location.
Right, right. But once all that is taken care of and you say, all right, well, I want to get some tile in the ground, you have to design how that tile is going to all be laid out. You're going to need a tile plow and you're going to need some tile. And we've had major shortages of tile each of the last couple of years. We don't expect that's going to change this next year. Now, don't get me wrong, all the tile manufacturers are ramping up the supply, but even so, if you want a tile next summer, I'd suggest ordering tile right now.
Okay, well, you got the tile, now you got to get it in the ground. And whether you're going to do it yourself or you're going to hire somebody, either way, you need to get that lined up early. Let's say that you're going to buy your own plow. That's fine, but there is a little bit of a wait time on them now. Farmer tile plows have been really popular lately, so it's something to keep in mind. Also, if you're going to hire somebody, if you're in an area where a lot of tile is going in the ground, the contractors are really booked up. So you need to talk to them in advance. Sometimes it may be a year in advance just to get on their schedule.
Well, I kind of look at tiling as one of these $100 an hour jobs we often talk about. We've been doing our own tiling for the last 4 or 5 years on our own farm. And obviously the tile does a tremendous amount of good for us and our farm and yield and everything else. But doing the work ourselves is a lot of fun, for one thing. I kind of like being out there. And if you look at how much money you can save, typically in a day we're saving $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 versus hiring somebody to do the work. Again, there are certainly going to be situations where you're going to want to hire somebody to do the work, and maybe you just simply don't have the ability to get this done yourself. But it's a job that most farmers, in my opinion, could do, so that's why these farmer tile plows have gotten as popular as they have. Well, tiling won't directly control our Weed of the Week, but having good drainage and a good crop will. We'll explain as we talk about our Weed of the Week coming up later in the show.